Hi Dan, Mark Stephenson speaking to Dan Retief. Here we are again. I can't believe that another week has passed and most of us are suffering withdrawal symptoms because of lack of rugby. But you are touching on a very important subject, the book of rules, and everybody is a little bit shattered about the rugby rule book. What have you got to say?
Yeah, thank you, Mark. I think we could entitle this little snippet Getting On Sides with Russie and with Eddie Jones, because they both now major coaches who says there are things wrong with the laws and it has to be addressed. So talking about being on sides, let's start with offsides. I've been unhappy for a long time that rugby has a law that says you have to be behind the hindmost foot of your own team. In other words, you're back to your own goal line and behind the hindmost foot. Everybody is a meter ahead of the hindmost foot and the outside backs are way offsides. And it's a real problem in the game because it eats up the space. So I'm suggesting there maybe we should look at a new law, a meter back from the hindmost foot, and the outside backs must stay in line. They can't rush up and crowd the wing. Then obviously offsides takes me to the ruck. The ruck is a real bugbear. Now the law in rugby still says that when there's a player from each side in touch with each other over the ball, you mayn't put your hands in. The law is still written like that. Now they've come with hands on, and every ruck has hands in. And of course we've seen in modern game there are these expert players that get there quickly, put their hands on the ball, but they've got to win that ball immediately. Once the shoulders touch, their hands have got to come out. So, and the referees need to be stronger on that. So I think we need to get back to rucking, where you get your numbers over the ball and push over the ball rather than all these hands in. What I worry about the hands in as well is that it puts the head in a very dangerous place. Then the next thing in the modern game that I really think needs to be addressed is what we call the driving maul. People refer to the rolling maul. It's not a rolling maul. The rolling maul in the 80s, the Springboks, the British Lions did very well. They spin the maul, but the driving maul is where they're sometimes 6-5 players ahead of the ball, normally off a line out, and that is offsides. It's legalized obstruction. You cannot play in front of the ball. It's a law of rugby. It's a tenet of rugby. You cannot play in front of the ball, and we allow it time and time again, which takes me on to the scrum feed. Now the scrum feed is absolutely illegal what's allowed. The scrum half stands under his loose head's chest and puts the ball in offsides. No longer down the middle, fair contest for the ball. Now, how can you have a law like that? What that leads to is the attacking scrum, where the defending side just tries and scrums because they're not interested in the strike, and that could lead to injuries. And that takes me on to that attacking scrum, scrumming for a penalty. Now, South African fans aren't going to like me talking about that because it's our go-to move. We score a lot of penalties off our scrum, especially when the bomb squad comes off. But I just think that's not right. If the scrum goes forward and it's explosive, the referee gives a penalty. Why? The ball's come out. Let the guys play with the ball. The next one comes from Alan Zondag, who to me is one of the great scholars of the game, a coached everywhere. And Alan has got a really good point about the penalty to touch. You get a penalty, you kick it to touch, and then you get the line-out throw. Alan's point about that is the penalty is your advantage. Why should you have another advantage by getting the line-out throw? That might get players to do different things rather than just kick the ball to touch. Then there's so many of these. The forward pass. In their wisdom, Rugby World Cup, World Rugby allowed a physical science to come into it about the speed of the ball, and a player running at speed would transfer his momentum to the ball. I say just pass it backwards, and the player who receives the ball must be behind the player who's passed. And then, you know, the attempted intercept, that's every time a player touches the ball, it's either a penalty or an intercept. What about the guys just trying to gather the ball? I think that's the worst one. And then the one that is causing a lot of problems at the moment, the last one, and you know that's nearly 9 laws that are focused on, is the head injury one, the low tackle, where you have to tackle low because they're trying to avoid head injuries. And that is a serious problem. There are players with late onset dementia, and rugby has to look at that. But I think there's been a lot of accidental head injury. We've already seen players dipping into that tackle, a player being bumped into the tackle, and suddenly there's an accidental head contact, and the player gets red carded. The All Blacks had one. It's just wrong. You know, it is a physical game. It's a hard game, and maybe we need to get to a point where players have to acknowledge that it is an extremely physical game, and they should maybe sign a certificate of indemnity saying they appreciate that. So that's the laws. I think something I could read from the law book, but something has to be done. Before we wrap up, I'm going on a bit today because you can see how many of the laws are wrong, is in any day now there's going to be a pride of black cats in the Lowveld Bushveld. The All Blacks are coming, waiting for the Springboks. There's nothing more that I anticipate in a test match. The All Blacks against the Springboks. Now, a very hurt All Black side, a Springbok side that is not really firing, and they're going to be playing in Nelspruit or Mbombela. I really look forward to it, but we'll talk about that next time.
Thanks, Dan. As ever, you really stretch our mind. Thank you.